It's DK's Jay from TacoYaki Anime.
Yo.
And we are back. Episode 71 of Monthly Ketchup. Whew. So,
This has been an interesting season.
yes. Today we're going to be talking about the winter anime of 2021. Our initial thoughts. For me, the season's been quite a fun season. I haven't done anything until like yesterday. But yeah, I had a lot of cool shows that I've been kind of like that whole high of not watching a bunch of anime and then seeing a bunch of trailers and being excited. That high from all those cool trailers is still around. So I was like, oh yeah, that one.
Yeah.
But yeah. So today we have 14 shows we're going to be talking about.
Oh yes.
And
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm about to say let's get started on these because there is going to be a great deal to talk about in this season. I feel.
All right, the first show we're talking about is X-Arm.
So, I saw somebody's review of this. You tell me what you thought about this. Because I remember when we first saw the trailer for this one, we were both like, what the hell is this? Like, I tore into it, and I almost felt bad about it, but then I watched somebody else's review of it and went, man, I was being nice to them about that. Holy shit. Because that was... It seems like it's pretty bad.
It's... Man, they tried. They tried so hard.
Tried.
Like,
I don't get this. This is a Crunchyroll original. And the same thing we've had, what? Tower of God, God of High School, and then they give us this?
So I think that the Crunchyroll originals are Crunchyroll giving money to like independent studios, and just like with games, sometimes you get a game that looks like a high school project, and other times you get Shovel Knight, right?
I think they need to be probably a little bit more selective on who they do that to, if that's the case, because, wow.
So for this show, if you're going to do a CG show, I'm like, how should I phrase this? I don't want to get people mad, but
I'll get people mad.
I have a different one. The bar is Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pass Ruby.
Yeah, bare minimum. Minimum. Because don't get me wrong, okay, and I will probably garner a daily hate for this, but it's just because, as I've already stated before, I am very, very selective when it comes to CGI anime. Like, my standards, if anything else, are probably way higher than your average person is. And I get that. I totally do. But that's because I've seen really good CGI, and I know what it feels like, and I'm more the person who deals more in the storyline. Like, between the two of us, I think we pretty much have a good coverage as far as what animes and how they work and do and whatnot, because you focus more on the visual aspects of it and how wonderful it looks and the sequencing and all that, whereas I focus more on the storyline aspect of it and how everything coalesces with each other and how it relates. God, this... I am, bare minimum, I am not a fan of, I'm not a fan of Ruby. I'm not. But again, that's because it just, the looks of it just throw me off. It does. I want to like it. I have tried multiple times to watch it, and I just can't do it. But from the review I saw online from somebody else on this, oh my god, did they go like a freaking... I'm not even sure high school project like quantifies this. This is more like middle school project, it feels like, almost. It's just not good. Like, I don't know what their idea was or what they were thinking about when they decided they wanted to do this, but God, they need to vet these a little bit better.
So, most of the time, as I was watching it, I'm picking apart the show. Mm-hmm. There's one part where the guy who basically shows up for like a couple minutes as himself, he was like there's few characters in the show that aren't CGI, and that's like the one of the android guys' brother, who was talking to him at the beginning of the episode, and as they're talking, I'm like, this dude over here is definitely CGI. This guy over here, either the best person on the team worked on him, because I can't tell, or he's 2D. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's 2D. And for some reason, they decided to do the scene with a 3D character and a 2D character together, which is harder than just picking one or the other. Mm-hmm. Because drawing in 2D, you just map it out a certain way, and then having 3D match the 2D or vice versa, it's extra work. So I don't know why they just like either, oh, well, we don't have a 3D model for the other guy, or nobody wants to draw the other guy. I don't know, but that's one thing where I was like, why? This is extra work. Why are they doing it this way? Mm. There's been other shows like you know Danbo, the little box character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's this show, Catbo something. It's Danbo, but it's a bunch of cats, and that show is in 3D, and it is spectacular. And the only time I get riled up on something that's 3D is when it completely blows my mind about how good it is, or I find some very huge flaw in it. And this show, I'm like, why are they doing extra work? There's like 12 scenes of them trying to match up 2D and 3D, and I'm like, this is not it's not working. Mm-hmm. So that was the one part where I was like, I don't like it. But then it cuts away from him in that form, and cuts away from the brother, and follows the girl that's in the middle of the picture, and then another girl which I don't see in the picture. But it's basically kind of like this heist movie where the two androids are trying to steal this case, and they're running either they're in a shipping yard or they're on a ship, can't remember. And I think it goes to both. And I can see what they were trying to do. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you tried to do. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like how you said, it's like the ideas of a kid where it's like, and then she's going to run down the hall and there's going to be like 17 guys, and then she's going to pick up a gun and then like flip and kick that guy. And then she kicks that guy, she's going to bounce and backflip, and then she's going to kick the other two guys at the same time. And then she's going to snatch one of their guns. And then she's going to run over.
I haven't necessarily seen, like, I'm going off of purely upon the review that I saw someone else did on this. But in his opinion, the and I'll find who it was I was watching just so I can reference him, and I want to give him credit for this and everything, because if this is something you're interested in watching, I highly recommend watching, because he actually had a few little clips in there and everything. But he even said, it's like, Lost Pause, that's what it was. Anyways, he even said in it, he's like, look, the fighting was probably the best part of the whole thing. And that was still bad. That was still bad. I mean, they even had, they had camera shots where they tried to do the zoom in, but it's like, basically they took a still image and they just zoomed in on the still image. So the closer you got to it, the blurrier and fuzzier it got. And you're like, that's not how you. Who thought that was a good idea? So, and I don't know from what he said, and it kind of seemed like the way to me looking at the few clips I saw of it, that it wasn't actually like there was 3D and then there was another better 3D. It was 3D blended with 2D, which is why it was just so startling. So it's like you probably had if they'd have made this 2D completely, they probably would have had a better time with it.
Yes.
I guarantee you at least that part.
Yeah. So one thing that's from the trailer that I noticed that how we kept saying slow motion, slow motion, slow motion, it's just bad timing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one thing that I watched a long time ago, and it's kind of like those bits of information that, like, you're like, oh, this guy, it gives you an epiphany. Like Batman the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he was fighting against one of the guys, I think it was a guy that had to do with clocks. Like the guy had everything down to like the exact millisecond, exact fraction of a second, and he basically had the upper hand against Batman. You know, I from a formula that I've seen in other shows, and it may not be this episode. What I remember from it, from what 20 something years ago, is that basically Batman lost that fight, and then when he came back, he had better timing, and then he ended up getting the upper hand against the guy that was against time. This show, like everything's like a half second longer than it's supposed to take. Like Batman's like, it takes me a fourth of a second to do a roundhouse kick, and they're like, it takes me a second and a half to do a roundhouse kick. And I'm like, what are you doing? And it's like gravity doesn't work that way. Like you trying to kick like that, you would have hit the ground halfway to the person. Like it needed to be double time is what it needed to be, and everything took like a time and a half longer than it should have.
See, this is why I'm saying I don't feel like I feel like they should have vetted this a bit more. This honestly, if what you said is true, and I'm not even sure that even that's 100%, but what you said is true, and that's fine if that's how they want to do it. If they want to throw some money at some studios to do some original series for them or whatever, just be like, hey, you take care of this. Okay, now we're gonna go to the studio. Okay, now you do whatever you want with this, whatever. That's fine. That's their choice. It's totally up to them. But my whole thought process on that is that if that is what they want to do, then by God, they need to make sure that whatever it is that they're going to slap their name on and stream on their service better be worth damn watching. I mean, because, from the movement of the characters, like you were saying, even taking out the fighting, just the basic head movement and turning was bad.
It was like what was the that one military show, and there was like a middle series that was silly.
Mm-hmm.
Fumofu.
Yeah,
Metal
yeah.
Panic.
Full Metal Panic.
Full Metal Panic. Yes, where in the first episode, how I was like, they animated in sections. It's like the person would be like, turn, turn, sit down. Like it's like one motion at a time. Like this show was better than that, where they had a few different things happening at the same time, but it looked like a robot was moving. It was like,
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, what is happening? Nothing's fluid. Like,
yeah, I did not understand. God, I'm glad I didn't watch it because I'd have been so pissed off that I wasted like 30 minutes of my life watching this thing. But the fact that their animation is just done so poorly, like it feels to me like they didn't even necessarily. It's like they had no care. This to me is one of those situations. If we're looking at this in a game development standpoint or from someone else, and being like, oh, they decided, someone did a Kickstarter on a game because maybe they threw out some good-looking things of still shots or whatever, or their idea of what it is they wanted to do in a game, and then when they got all the money, they're like, well, if we cut this thing in half and put half the effort in and half the money that we received in to be able to do this, we can bank all the rest of the money and just say, bye, and we'll just go start another studio. You
So
know what I mean?
It's not like Cyberpunk where they worked on it real hard and they just ran out of time and sent
I
out a
don't,
60% done product.
I don't even feel, yeah, I don't even feel, I don't even want to give them that much of a benefit of the doubt on that. Jesus. Like, not even close to that, because I'm just looking at it going, there feels like there was not a care in the world by the people who were doing, how, there again, this is one of those things where I've said before about like game studios and anime studios and stuff like that, where I'm looking at going, okay, if you're making these things, you at least have to be aware of your competition. You at least have to be aware of what other people are bringing out into the world. And you have to understand what is hitting currently and what is not.
I feel like Ruby inspired this show.
Well, if this had been done when Ruby came out originally, maybe this would be done, this would be a little bit different. But God, how long ago did Ruby come out? Shit.
just like that one, like the one thing that I absolutely love from Ruby is the Red Riding Hood character. I have no, I don't know anything about it other than the title and that one clip. But the trailer for her was awesome, and that trailer reminds me of this entire show. And they just didn't execute it as well as the trailer was.
Ruby came out 8 years ago. 8 years ago. It's nearing a decade. I mean, it's really close to that. And I'm sorry, but no. Just no. You know, I stick up for Crunchyroll in a variety of ways and a variety of things. I love their service. I think that they're way better at their, you know, the whole web format on streaming services and all that stuff. And for the most part, huh?
Their current Roku TV app sucks.
Well,
change it back.
And then for the well, see, now that might have been because Funimation bought them out essentially. Remember Sony? Remember we talked about that last time. Did it just change recently after we talked about that? Because that
not after, but it changed recently.
That might be the reason why.
Stop it.
And I've loved a great deal of the series they put out, even the original series that they put out. You know, Tower of God, God of High School. You know, but God, there are just certain situations where you just got to look at it and go, "What were you thinking?" Like, what were you thinking? This has a score on, what is it? The one's website for anime. I want to think when the Lost Pause was talking about it, he said it had a score of 2.32 out of 10. That's horrible. You're nearing rock bottom at that point. I mean, come on. God of High School at least had like a 7.9.
Yeah.
You know? If this was inspired by Ruby, it should not have gotten... I don't know what... But I don't even know what budget it got, but I almost feel like it shouldn't have gotten whatever budget it did. I really do. Or if they were intending on going as far as they did, if they ran out of it, they should have asked for more before they signed off on it. Somewhere along the way, there's a shortcoming somewhere, and I'm not 100% sure whose shortcoming it is, but by God, there's a shortcoming somewhere. Because, oh my God, that was just cringe. It's cringe. I mean, we're far beyond this at this point. I feel like we should be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And they tried.
This is like a decade-old anime that should have been released then and would have had maybe a slightly better, you know, receiving. But at this point, it's just like, oh, God, no. God, no, 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 no. What did you do? Why? Why have you forsaken us? You know. So, but anyways, yeah. At least I feel like that we're both on the same page with this as far as that goes. It's just like,
Oh yeah, don't,
this
like only watch this if you want to see animation from 10 years ago and a story from like the 90s.
20. I was about to say 20 years ago.
Yeah, because it is nowhere near the standard.
Oh, it is just so cringe. Yeah, I don't even know what to think of it anymore. But
Like
anyway,
I was able to sit through it. Like it wasn't Triage X, but like
you can sit through it, but you're just looking at kind of. I'm almost guarantee the reason why you sat through it's like it's got to get better. It's got to get better.
well, I'm just like I'm like oh, okay, well I'm like this is too slow because I have a degree in 3D animation, so I'm like I see what they did. I'm like that's the hard way to do it. I don't know why you did it that way. The timing's off. Why is everybody floating? Then I'm like, this could be done better. That could be done. So I'm just slowly picking it apart. And I'm like, okay, you tried. I give you a C. Like
You just got to think about it and just be like, you know what? It's just if you want to do the whole Matrix thing or you want to be the next Ruby, like okay, I get it. Sure, why not? But
like who forgot to turn off the Matrix mode?
Yeah, you gotta have reasons for that thing, man. You gotta have like standards for that. You can't just throw it out there and be like, well, this is why we're doing it. It's like, no. There's gotta be a point behind it. You can't just be like, well, she's a badass, so she's gonna be doing all these cool tricks and floats and everything, so here we go.
I just thought about it. The two guys I used to work with, I think I'm gonna send them the first episode and get their opinion on it.
Really?
Yeah, I want to have a conversation with them. Maybe we'll record it or something. I don't know. That'd be fun.
Should be like, you know what? It should be like, you know what? Can we talk with the studio on this? Can we have like a sit down and let them know? Okay, you guys need to redo this, and here's what you need to do. Use this program because whatever else you're doing, it's wrong.
All right. Well, I was off to a right.
Picking that one apart.
So, let me see. There's two shows that I wanted to watch, and I could not get to them because the Funimation app would not play episode 1. They played episode 2, and on one show I immediately got spoiled, and I'm like, no. Because I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not missing out on too much on the first episode. So that one, what is the name of the show? The one show that was made by Go Hands, that one that almost made me dizzy, that first episode of that last show. Praetor no Kizu, or Scar on the Praetor. Somebody got hurt in the first episode, and I don't know why or how, but then I was like, you know what, let me at least try the second episode, so I want to watch some of it so I can see if it's getting better or worse. I don't know. And there's two guys with their backs against each other. He's like, why did you sacrifice yourself? And the other dude's like, dead. And I'm like, no. I'm like, he died. I don't even know him. Oh my god.
Oops.
So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm done with that. And then the other one that I really wanted to watch was the one with the girls with the guns, picnic something, other side picnic. I decided not to accidentally spoil myself on that one, so I just tried to play the first episode, and Funimation is like, it's broken, and I'm like, okay. So yeah, I didn't get to those two, but I wanted to watch them. Like, I was excited for it. But yeah, the next show he's talking about is Hataraku Saibo Black, or Cells at Work Code Black.
As much as I enjoyed the first season, well, I thought it was cute, at least the first season. I'm like, oh, this is adorable. We're talking about the inner workings of a human. Da 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 da. That's all awesome. Da 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 da. I never could bring myself to finish that series, and I knew going into it, I'm like, there's just no way I'm going to be able to bring myself to be able to watch this one either. I feel it. So
we had a thought that the original series is with a healthy body, and Black Code Black is an unhealthy body, and that is the case. So apparently, the body in this series is unhealthy, stressed out, and started smoking again. Because everything that went wrong, they're like, oh, this happens because of stress, or oh, this happens because they're like, oh, it's the LDL corporation, and I'm like, oh, y'all talking about LDL cholesterol? I'm like, oh, I've heard of that. And then like some carbon monoxide got into the body, and like some other people were all like, ah, and I'm like, okay. And there's a guy who you meet, he's really cool, and he like sacrifices himself, of course, because I was like, this dude's cool. I like him. And he's like,
he dies.
he runs off into the monoxide. I'm like, ah, damn it, every time. And then it seems like things are like gender switched. Like all the T cells in this one are female, and all the blood cells in this one are all male. There's the kids are still the kids, but everybody's just stressed out and worn out, and it's like the main blood cell guy from the first episode. He just started working there, and they have this training video, and like a lot of training videos, it's outdated. It was made when the body was healthy, so there is like, yeah. And he's like showing all the different parts of the body and all this kind of stuff, and everybody's like, "Oh, hi guys! Make sure you tell me your name." I loved remember seeing faces and all that kind of stuff. And of course, now 10 years later, the body's all run down and falling apart, and like you meet that same guy, and he's like, "We ain't got time for that. Go!" He's like, "What you said?" And he's like, "They're still using that video that was from 10 years ago." So I'm like, okay. So basically, it's just like the first series, except horrible conditions. And
that's an interesting play on that, I think, because
yeah,
it's really weird to think that there would be a continuing series for this, and I see why they just named it, whatever, it Black essentially, just because it is similar to the first one but different in its own way.
Yeah.
So,
because it's like if you're explaining the normal functions of the body, you're like, this is how it normally works. But in certain cases, this could happen, and you don't want to like detract from how it's supposed to function.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, let's just make a whole separate thing of when everything goes wrong, and then we can show you the same process, but everything that could go wrong, and then this one will remain untainted and just shows you how it's supposed to function. So it's like, that's really cool. I have now seen the first episode of both series, and I think that both of them are cool. But yeah, it's I like this. It reminds me of like Osmosis Jones. It's an interesting concept on,
I can see that
on this concept. Where is it?
I could see that. It was definitely one of those that I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but it wasn't like, I don't know. I again, I enjoyed the concept for what it was, and I thought, oh, this is interesting to see how they go about their day to day lives and such like this is, and even more interesting to me was is I actually found a reaction from a doctor on this for the first season, where
Uh,
he was actually explaining that what they were talking about was in fact like there was some scientific, like they were actually going for realistic things in that, which I thought was really cool.
I wonder if
Um,
you've seen like the second one to see if like, or at least Code Black to see if it's the same.
yeah, I don't know. But
But
I mean, either way, things like that. That's that to me. Going at least taking a reference from the previous one we had talked about. That to me shows this is what good storytelling is about. This is what defines good storytelling. You have something fantastical, basically saying that there's a whole civilization of people inside of your body, essentially. Like that's a fantastical thing. Um, but but to say that what it is that they do or how they actually work in progress, there is actually a reasoning and a point behind that. Like it actually in the end actually makes sense. So to me, I'm like that's pretty damn cool. I'm on board for that.
Yeah.
um but as cutesy and as interesting in that regard as it was, it just never really was my cup of tea, I guess, for the most part. So this is definitely one I would definitely say to people. I'm like, hey, if you want to go for it, take a watch because it's definitely has some interesting aspects to it. But I mean, it's definitely not for everybody. So.
Oh yeah. Yep. Okay. So the next show we'll be talking about is Horimiya. So
Oh yeah, this one. you know, I was like, wait, which one? And then I looked at the picture. I'm like, oh no, this one's yours. I didn't even have to like guess about that. I'm like, nope, this one's yours.
So, uh, this show reminds me of Kokoro Connect. Without the whole body swapping thing, it's like a high school love triangles kind of show. It's a romance. I haven't watched a romance in a while. I think the last one that I got into was like uh something My Love Story. It's with that really big, like sumo wrestling looking dude and this little cutesy girl. And like
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. I don't remember the name of it though, but yeah, I remember which one you're talking about.
yeah. I think that's the last one that I like got really wanted to watch, but still didn't. This is another show that I really like. And it's cool because not only did they like twist the the tropes of the characters,
Mm-hmm.
they like made them real, like realistic, and
Now,
them doing that.
when you
Huh?
say that, making them realistic, are you referring to like they gave them? They're not like perfect beings. They actually have like underlying issues and problems by themselves, kind of thing.
Um, I would
Or what do
say
you mean by
somewhat.
they like
Like
make it
there's
realistic?
still the whole stereotypical like one of the girls her mom's working overtime. Like it seems like she's a like there's a single mom
Mm-hmm.
and the mom's working overtime, so then she basically has to kind of step up and pick up her little brother from school and take him home and all that and get groceries, make dinner and all that kind of stuff.
Because to
Where
me, where it comes to realistic, and especially when it involves characters, is that you have characters who have like innate flaws. They're not like perfect individuals. They have their own issues. They have their own qualms and problems and things that they're having to deal with. Besides whatever the plot point itself is throwing at them.
yes, I would say it would probably develop to something like that. But being as I've only seen the first episode, I would say it's probably heading towards that.
Okay.
There are certain things where like basically the characters act natural, like just like Bunny Girl Senpai, the show that I fell in love with last year. Um, this show like has characters that I'm like, oh no, oh no, these characters are starting to be really good. And
See, you just have a problem with that just because when characters are starting to be good in animes, that usually means they're gonna die.
well, so there's a difference where it's like this character's good and this character's cool. Like if the character's cool, like this old dude who knows everything and he's really strong and he's like teaching everybody a lot of stuff in the first episode, and it's like, man, you're cool. Like you've been here for a while, you know everything, and then monsters attack and like slice him in half. And I'm like, ah, like these characters are like, okay, he not only is popular with the girls, he actually is hiding the fact that he's really into encyclopedias. But he doesn't only just do encyclopedias. He also has this and this issue and that issue, and he's kind of just hiding all of that from everybody. It's not like a one note or two note type of character. Like they reveal a lot of stuff about all the different characters or at least the characters that they've shown so far. And I don't know. It's unraveling the character, and I don't know. I just really like it. So I would say the girl in the middle. She's the one who her mom works overtime. She has to basically like she doesn't hang out with the group of like 4 or 5 people that hang out in the class, and she doesn't tell everybody why. And the reason why is because she has to get home, get groceries, pick up her brother from school, and make dinner and all that kind of stuff before her mom gets home. The guy to the left of her, he is the typical long dark-haired guy with glasses, and
can I just say that you'd figure after all the years of anime that I've watched that I would get used to the whole pretty boy little aspect here, but it never gets any easier. It really doesn't. I look at him and I'm like, the only real difference between him and the girl next to him is the fact that he actually has a tie. That's it. That's all it is. That's seriously it. And I'm like, come on, really?
So yeah, he basically looks like the strict student council guy that doesn't really talk to anybody unless he needs to do something about his like student council duties, and like he always has the highest scores in class and all that kind of stuff. And that's nothing about him at all. He basically looks like that because he's covering up. Well, let's see. But I would say at this point, it's a really good romance show. If you like any of the like romance shows that I've recommended, this is another one that I would suggest that you check out. But now I'm actually gonna start spoiling it because there's like a few different things that are different about this, and if you want to see it for yourself, go ahead and check it out. But yeah, so for him, he is like goes with the flow. He's kind of like a chill guy. He has a bunch of tattoos, and and like in Japan and stuff like that, being in high school, like getting tattoos is like dyeing your hair blonde and getting tattoos, you'll get kicked out of school.
Yeah.
So
tattoos in general, if anyone who doesn't actually know, culturally wise, tattoos in general are very much a taboo thing for Japan.
Yeah.
I think where that comes from is because they relate it to something akin to like the Yakuza.
Yeah.
I think is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, usually, yeah, that's what that comes from. It's we look at it as a very odd thing because that's not something we're necessarily accustomed to. But I mean, it's a real thing for them. So
Yeah. So and it's with his personality, and like where the tattoos are, it's very asymmetrical, and it doesn't really like. I don't know much about like tribal tattoos, but it's like he has something across his arm, so he can't wear anything short sleeved, and then it goes down one side of his body. So like if it was like a dragon or something that like went up his side and around his arm, that would make sense. But from what I know, but for him to have like a few different shapes here and then like slightly down the side and then not the same thing on the other side or something else, it feels incomplete. And from what little I know about him, I'm like, I think he started it and he was like, oh my God, this hurts. And then they started like, but I already started it, so let me go ahead and try to finish. And then he got to a point where he's like, you know what, I'm done. You can just finish up that part and I'm gonna be done. Or it's a specific print or something like that. It's just, I don't understand it completely. And it's kind of weird. Like it's just around one arm, one down one side, and then that was it.
I will say, depending upon how extensive those tattoos are, they're probably pretty expensive.
Yeah. And then he has tons of piercings. So like all around the ears, and then his lip, and then he has a chain coming from one ear down to the lip. And the main girl in the middle, she's like running one of her errands, and she bumps into this guy who has all these piercings, and his hair's all like out and all that kind of stuff, and he's like wearing loose shirts and all that kind of stuff, and he bumps into her, and he's like, "Oh, hey," and she's like, "Do you know me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've been saying." She's like, oh, "It's you!" So she freaks out because piercings and like that is like basically he looks like a punk, and I can't remember how, but he ends up going to her house and they end up having dinner, and they like he's shocked by how plain she looks, and she's shocked by how like
different he looks.
Yes, different he looks. And that's kind of something that they like kind of bond over a little bit. So they basically hang out for like weeks, and of course in the class they start noticing that both of them start talking more and more. And one of the guys has a crush on the girl. One of the other guy's friends has a crush on the girl. So at one point, both of them are on the balcony. He's like talking, and he's like, "What do you think about her?" And he's like, "Oh, she's blah blah blah." And he's like, he thinks that he's gonna ask her out, and actually, he's like, "Are y'all two together?" And he's like, "No, I don't think we make a good couple." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Do you mind if I ask her out?" And he's like, "You don't have to ask me. No, I'm not. We're just friends." So he asks her, and she gets turned down, and then the girl gets mad, and she's like, for some reason, when the guy gets turned down, he tells her everything that the other guy said about them not being a good couple and stuff like that. So she gets pissed off and like comes up with him the next day, and it's like, why did you say that we don't look like a good couple? And it's like, I'm like, y'all aren't a couple yet. Why are you getting? So I'm like, what? And he's like, well, I didn't think that we were a good couple. And she's like, what? Who's gonna help me with my brother when blah 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 happens? And who's gonna eat the rest of my dinner when I get full? And she starts crying, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And they're like, it's weird, like husband-wife relationship already. And then he's like, well, he asked you out, like, why don't you date him? And he's like, why don't you date him? And then he's like, well, I don't think we would make a good couple because this and that. And I'm like, dude. So I'm like, for him to get a tattoo or something like that, I bet he was like, man, I'll try it. And then at a certain point, he's like, you know what? I don't think that this is a good idea anymore. And then he just stops. So I'm like, he's, for what you see him in class, you think that he was the strict, always yelling at people, making sure people are standing in line, student council guy. And he is not that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really interested in the characters. Like, and that's only 2 out of the first, like 2, and then the one that got turned down. I think he's the purple hair guy. Like they basically just introduced the first row, the middle row, and there's 6 other characters that I'm like, one girl. Oh, there was one moment where the girl, she's actually part of some kind of council thing, and at the same time she found out that there's a sale on eggs, and she's like, bet. Soon as class is over, I'm about to run down the road and I'm gonna snatch up all those eggs, because just like with a lot of anime that have like during lunch, there's like this special like noodle sandwich or something like that everybody wants, and there's always this crowd and everybody fighting over it. Same thing happens at the shopping markets with all the moms and stuff trying to like fighting over all the deals, and because her mom can't actually get those deals, she goes instead after school, and she's like, oh, there's a sale on eggs, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, but what about your meeting? And she's like, nah, they won't have a meeting today. They had one yesterday. They're gonna have one 2 days in a row. Of course. over the PA system is like, dang, we need all the council members to come here after class. And she's like, crap. And she like texts the guy, and she's like, you go get the eggs for me. I'll meet you at the house. And he's like, what? So he bolts out the class, starts loosening his tie, like pulls his hair back so he can start like he can move better, and then like jumps the fence and like just flies over the fence all athletic and manly like, and then the girl's like, she's walking home and just sees this guy go flying across the fence with his locks just flowing in the wind, and she's all like
God.
So she's gonna end up having a crush on him in the next couple episodes. So I'm like, this is a fun show. Like, I really, really like this
show. I'll think about it. It's one of those things where, I know you're readily able to jump into something like that, but I really have to kind of be in a good mindset to be able to do something.
Yeah, this is definitely slice of life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. I like this. This is a good romance for the season. All right. The next show we're going to be talking about is Jujutsu Kaisen. So, whenever it's like 2 cores in a row, I always skip first impressions on the second one. So I won't have any new info or new opinions until the end of the season.
This has been, like, just the beginning of this season has been outstanding. This is, everything that you want in an anime wrapped up into one. It has good character development. It has crazy characters. It has... I mean, we met in the first core, the one dude, Toko, I think? The big burly muscular dude who ended up taking on can't remember the main character's friend at first until the cursed speaker stopped them.
Oh, the one that likes tall women?
Yeah. Because it's funny because one of the very first things that he ends up asking, of course, because he ends up meeting the main character, and he's like, what type of women do you like? And he's like, tall women with big butts. And immediately, like, in his mind, he saw them as being like the best of friends. Like, all of a sudden they were like high school friends having gone through a whole bunch of stuff on their own, and I'm like, oh my god, it's hilarious. I mean, it's like I said, that to me, if you want to do some, this is how you do essentially a fighting anime done well. or any sort of like, the main focus is fighting because a lot of that has to happen. You know, the curse things, that's a lot of that has to happen, but it's not all that has to happen. And they've made these really interesting, funny, thought out characters that I just look at and go, holy crap! I mean, this is awesome. That more or less, without getting into any spoilers, because I know you're gonna watch this. I know
Oh
you're gonna.
yeah.
You're gonna watch it. I don't want to spoil anything else to you for this, but I just really wanted to say that for those out there who have ever been on the fence, who have been curious about this anime, go watch it. Just go watch it. It is the twists and turns, even from the first season that we watched. That if you recall, even the twists and turns that happened there were so great that I mean, I'm at a loss for words, honestly. If I were to say one way or the other, I'm just at a loss because I never expected the things to happen, even from the first season. The fact that the main character dies in like the first 3 or 4 episodes, and how he dies. I'm just like, holy shit, what happened? Um, yeah, I mean, it's a nonstop thrill ride. Characters are hilarious. Powers are amazing. We finally get some clarification on the panda that's not a panda.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's what he's about. Oh, all right, yeah, no, I'm on board for this. You think, oh, he's just a panda or whatever. That's just gonna, for some reason has the intelligence of a human or whatever. But no, he's even way more than that. So I don't know. This is an awesome show. This is one I think that everyone should definitely, regardless of your feelings behind, because it has the comedy, it has the action, it has the drama, it's dark and gritty. I mean, those curses that they come up with, and the looks of them, and what they do to people. That one that was behind that one kid's mother in the first season. You don't even see anything that happened. Like, you don't see what had happened. You just see it looming behind her or whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, that is some supernatural freaky shit that would freak me the frick out. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's I feel like it's one of those that's it's good for everybody. And um even though like we're 3 or 4 episodes into the second core of the season, um I feel like that, even though we haven't really seen much of his resident curse that's inside of him, it doesn't feel like, because a lot of times when you have some big main dude like this curse that's inside of him and everything that everyone's freaking out about or worried about, it becomes something of the main focus, and then when he doesn't make an appearance or doesn't show up for 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes, it sort of seems like those episodes where he's not in are lackluster. But they've made the other characters and even Yuji Itadori so interesting in his own way, and seeing him develop and gain the powers and abilities that he does have, so interesting that it would be cool to see him back in there, but I almost don't mind. You know what I mean? And that, to me, that boggles my mind, because I've seen so many animes where that was not the case. Where they're like, oh, there's this big baddie, or oh, there's some supernatural. I mean, even thinking about like in terms of like Naruto. When you first learned about the fact that he has the nine-tailed fox inside of him, and when he started talking with him and everything, and like after his first release, where he actually, it came out more on him, we're like, oh, this is amazing. And then they stopped, because then they sidetracked on something else, and you're like, can we get back to that? That was cool. I want to see more of that. This doesn't have that. Those characters are so cool on their own that I'm enjoying every second of it. So
Yeah, I can't wait to get back to that one. Let me see. The next show we're talking about is Kai Boy Ramune, or Dr. Ramune, Mysterious Disease Specialist.
You said you didn't watch this one, right? Yet? Okay. This is weird. This is a very. I'm not gonna say it's not weird in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
It is not weird in a bad way. I almost the closest that I could correlate this to is XXX Holic.
Okay.
So prepare yourself going into that, thinking about it in that way, and I'm
Okay.
sure you'll have a better time going into it.
Mm-hmm.
Going into it completely blind, I kind of stopped after the show ended, and I had to be like, "What did I just watch? What the hell just freaking happened?" So, okay, let's say for instance, first episode. Just a brief kind of overview summary of the first episode. You see a girl going to a doctor. She goes to many different doctors, and each one of them does an examination on her eyes, but then says there's nothing they can do to help her, and she's fine. Maybe she's stressed or whatever. And the dude with the broom and the I'm getting the wrong picture. Yeah, so the dude with the broom and the jacket in the background is actually the doctor's assistant. So the doctor is very much like, I want to say, how best to describe him. He's kind of like the blonde-haired kid in Do Ra Ra Ra. So he's very like outgoing, expressive, like, oh hey, let's have fun.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Where his assistant is very much like the exact opposite. We've got like a the Odd Couple sort of routine going on here with them. So one of them is very much just like, the other one's like, let's go do this. It sounds like fun. His assistant ends up coming across her as she is crying, distraught, and tells him, and when she asks what's wrong, that nobody would believe her, that she has a problem, and he ends up finding out that she is a child actress. And one of the thing is that she does dramas, and she cries, like she has the ability to cry on cue. Like she can make herself cry. But the thing is that her mother has been essentially taking advantage of her because she is a child actress or whatever, and because she does so well, she makes all this money, and she basically uses the money to buy things for herself. Not to say that she necessarily like completely neglects the child, but like there's obviously like a defining line between like the kid's bedroom was very much plain, nothing like like poor or anything, but very much like plain or whatever. Like you'd find any typical anime girl kid bedroom or whatever, whereas mother had like designer purses, designer shoes, dresses, like all sorts of these things and whatever. And what was happening is because of, they never really quite explained it very well, but I'm guessing just because of the mental stress it was putting her under, essentially was causing a curse to assume, where instead of crying normal tears, she cried condiments. So she would cry mayonnaise, or she would cry soy sauce, or she would cry, which in that one preview, the one that we saw, that was why when I saw her tears, I'm like, that's very weird as far as the tears go. That don't look like normal tears. And I'm like, oh, that's why those aren't normal tears. Okay, gotcha. Cool. He gave her a sort of a he's like, he's like, you can't, you've overused yourself. You need to tone it down. You need to hold back. You need to not be as prevalent as what you have been. And she's like, well, what if I have to go and do scenes or write a for the TV show, da 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 da. And he's like, okay, I'll tell you what, I will give you these um, contact lenses that you can put in that will allow you to do things normally. But he cautioned her and he said, don't overuse them. And what ends up happening, of course, is she overuses them. And what ended up happening was, yeah, she cried normally, but that's because what would have come out as like condiments that would have come out as it was before was actually being kept inside of her. So it was actually her body started to get atrophy. Like she collapses at one point, and the doctor comes in and scolds her for having used the contacts more than he recommended from her. And you could see like her hands and her legs were starting to blacken because it was becoming too much. Instead of having let it out like it was before, it wasn't doing that anymore because she was essentially keeping it inside of her. But I guess that was more of a symbolic thing because it was more like she's keeping her emotions inside of her. Like she actually had feelings because at that time that she did collapse, her mom was giving a tour for a TV show of their house or whatever, their home, and showing off all these things that she had purchased and bought or whatever with the money from her child, essentially. And it was becoming, she grinned and bared it. She didn't say what she really felt. She didn't say how it made her feel that her mother was placing more importance on the purchases that she was able to get because of her rather than her own daughter. And with everything that was happening, it was causing too much. And the doctor goes, I can fix this. And she's like, well, fix it. He goes, well, you're going to have to be willing to make some sacrifices in order to fix this. Because either one of two things has to go. Either your daughter or the things that you hold more cherished beyond your daughter. And when she made the choice of saving her daughter, like it was like this giant wind storm that came through and essentially made all of her possessions burn up and like turn to ash essentially. So all of the shoes, all of the purses, all of the dresses or whatever, all just disintegrated essentially. But then her daughter was fine. And then the very next thing you see is that they go out on because it was cherry blossom season, and the doctor, his assistant, and the girl and the mom, they all met out there and they had a nice little picnic. And she actually cried tears of joy, and they actually were tears. And that was how the episode ended. Okay. So I can kind of see how this show is going to be one where it's going to be a continuation of that sort of circumstance, like just like XX Holic was. Like there almost was no correlation between one episode and the next, other than the fact that characters who were the ones helping the people come with the problems to solve the problems. It was just a matter of every week was a new problem, and every week was something different that caused it, and you had to take care of it, kind of thing. Okay. So that's kind of where I see this show headed. There's really not going to be there's no demon lord or some big bad boss or whatever. It's like, no, it's just going to be like, it is kind of a slice of life, but it's very much a weird slice of life because you're very much like, there's strange things happening to people, and it's because they don't see what it is that they're doing to themselves, and it's manifesting itself in a way that would not normally come about. Okay.
That is cool.
So
I might check that out one day.
It's not. It's not. It's definitely one of those because again, it's a slice of life. So I'm kind of like, it is interesting because it's different in its own way. It does remind me a lot of XXX Holic, which I really love that series. That was one of my more favorite series, easily probably up there in the top 10, if not top 15, for me. But I mean, it's kind of be one of those you kind of have to prepare yourself for, because yes, they have some happy endings, but I imagine just like it did in XXX Holic that eventually those endings aren't always going to be the happiest, I guess. There's going to be consequences behind it. Eventually, you can't, you can't keep dodging your and have an end all cure for whatever it is that you've been doing or whatever. Sometimes there's going to be some consequences to it. So I imagine that's what's going to happen at some point. We're not going to have like a horrible ending, I think, but it's not going to be like a great ending like this kind of one was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we're going to have one that's going to be kind of a neutral where you're like, oh, well, I'm glad they're okay, but damn, that kind of sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to have that 50-50. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. The next show we're going to be talking about is redo of Healer.
All right. Who did this one? TNK. What other things has TNK done? Is this a brand new studio? It's a fairly brand new studio. They've done a few other things. Some of them I question. I see a lot of high school DxD inside of here, amongst other things. So, I am going to start off by saying that I do not believe this should be quantified as an anime.
7 Deadly Sins?
They might have helped in it, but I don't think they were part of it.
This is a different 7 Deadly Sins. Emphasis on the sins.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Which, okay, yeah, that's what I'm saying. This show, Redo of Healer, I would not quantify this as an anime. This is not an anime. And I think the only place that you can actually view this is on, I want to say, High Dive, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
This is, I think, the only place streaming it. This is say for what it is. This is hentai. This is straight up freaking hentai, and to a bad degree. To a just absolute horrible degree. Now, it didn't start off that way. Let's just say, we'll go through this. So, the main character, Kiare, I think his name, yeah, Kiare. So, Kiare got chosen to be a healer, or he's a hero, but his hero power is healing. To the extent of he doesn't, it's not like someone could get like a stab wound or whatever, and he can close the wound up. What he does is like someone had their arm cut off, not even most recently, like they just didn't have an arm, and he essentially regrew their arm. But the problem is that every time he heals somebody, every time he touches somebody in this regards, he experiences everything from them. So like somewhat of their knowledge and somewhat of the reasonings behind what their injury came from, he himself experiences that. It's like a rebound effect, essentially. And originally, when he first started, he said that he was not going to use his powers. He said it was just too much, which I get that. I mean, I would totally understand that. Yeah, you've been given this great gift, but it has such a consequence to it because, I mean, it almost immobilizes him every time he has to use it. And I think the more severe the injury would be, the worse it would get. So, originally, he told the girl, the pink hair, that because that was the first other hero he came across. She was gaining all heroes around her in order to basically fight the Demon Lord. Where you pick up in the first episode is right when they're facing the Demon Lord. So there's already been a huge amount of stuff that's happened.
Yeah, I was like, dang, they're the boss right off the bat.
They're right off the bat. Yeah, so they're right off the bat. But here's the thing. they've only realized the fact that he goes into almost a comatose state whenever he does healing, but that's because he does healing on somebody else. He can actually manipulate the healing upon himself and actually use abilities he never had because he has gained the knowledge from healing others on what they can do. So swordsman skills, alchemy, the knowledge and the capability of being able to do so, he actually gains for himself. And when he heals himself, it's debatable as far as whether or not, I don't think that's more of he doesn't go in a comatose state, but I think some of his mental state sort of deteriorates a little bit. Because eventually what he ended up doing is he allowed the other heroes to die, and he ends up, I think the pink-haired girl at one point, I want to say he killed her. I'm not 100% sure on that first episode. But he gets the Stone of Power from the Demon Lord, takes it from her, and using the stone, he pushes his consciousness back in time. So back before he became hero, he removed himself and pushed his own consciousness back into that point. So at one point, he wakes up before he became a healer, and he'd been hearing voices this entire time, didn't know where it was coming from, and then he ends up getting an ability that he finds from a spirit in a lake, and it triggered his mental prowess to be able to come back to where his future self and past self merged, essentially. Okay. I will be an aside. I'm like, okay, this is all magical, this is all fantastical, hey, whatever. And the fact that he did what he did in the future / past, I guess, essentially, is like, okay, that's interesting in its own right. Here's where things start to go a little bit crazy haywire. Is he gets the symbol on his hand that promotes him as a hero. The girl in pink hair, gets recognition that, oh, somebody has been named a hero in this town, I can go and get them. And prior to her arriving, when his memories get back, he already knows what's going to happen. He knows step by step how everything comes together and lays out. So what he does, he wants revenge for the things that had happened to him. We don't know necessarily the whole story behind that, but we know that they did not treat him well. So, one of the things that ends up happening to him, he knows, is that eventually they drug him. So what he does is he goes into the forest and starts collecting specific mushrooms and eating them. And it's intoxicating, but it's not to the point of the drug that he took, so he's building his own immunity up. Okay. So things play out the way they did before. He gets taken to the castle. The girl in pink is actually a princess, and she introduces him to the king. He does his ability. He goes into a comatose state, and when he wakes up, he says that he's no longer going to do this. So basically, she has her assistant basically drug him. They take him into their dungeon or whatever. They drug him. They abuse him in both a physical sense and a sexual sense as well. They abuse him. So that happens. Eventually, and God, the depravity of what they do in that regards is just, it's disgusting. It's like they treat him like a dog. He acts like a dog, barking and asking for more drug and everything. And eventually his mind snaps back. Because he built himself immunity, but he built himself a resistance. It wasn't immunity, it was just a resistance. Okay. So it was a matter of the drug still took hold, but instead of the past that it happened, where it took hold, and it wasn't until they basically that fight with the demon king or whatever that they ended up, or demon lord, that he ended up snapping out of it. he actually snapped out of it now, while he's still being kept hostage. So he escapes. And I'm like, okay, what? You had revenge. Now you're escaping. What's going on here? Well, he escapes, and the captain of the guard, who also had abused him, he ends up using his ability and taking the shape, the form of the captain of the guard, and changes the captain of the guard's form to his. And then basically roughs him up to where he can't speak near or move to the point where he wouldn't be able to refute who he's saying he is. And then comes back in and saying, I found him. Then goes, well, there were certain things that he told me, and I need to tell you in private. And she goes, okay, well, you can come up to my room, and we'll discuss this. And so he did, and then he revealed himself to be the hero, quote unquote. I really use that term lightly in this one because I don't think any of them are heroes, honestly. And then proceeds to rape her. And then blanks her memories, clears her. Like, I'm like, okay, you've seceded, and I'm thinking he had his revenge. He's going to he starts a fire, and I'm like, you're gonna leave her there to die, whatever. Maybe you even killed her and then just leave the body there. I don't know. Hey, it's your revenge. I honestly, you were abused. I get it. Totally fine. Whatever. Then you find out he blanks her memories to where she no longer remembers who she is, what she'd done. And then when she wakes up, proceeds to implant memories inside of her mind that apparently the two of them, he is her master, and then she needs to service him on a regular basis. And I'm like, all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And the thing that gets me the most about this, is I don't have connection to High Dive, right? And I actually found this originally before I knew what the hell was going to happen in all this. Just curiosity myself going into this. I found the uncensored version of this on YouTube. On YouTube. For anyone to watch. And this whole thing, like, okay, I'm not unworldly enough to know, like, yeah, is it shocking? Sure. But it's not like I haven't seen stuff like this before. I've known stuff like this exists or whatever. And I don't even throw it back to the fact that, like, back in, last year we had Goblin Slayer. And the internet blew up about the fact that there was a goblin that ended up in the very first episode raping a woman. But here's the thing. Back then, there was a reasoning behind it. Like, they don't have female goblins. This is like how they procreate. This is how they continue their lineage or whatever, is essentially this is what they do. It's a horrible thing, and the anime made sure to let you know this is a horrible, horrible thing. Monstrous. Horrible, right? So you had a very, like, your feelings towards goblins were very much the way Goblin Slayers was. You're like, oh, hell no, kill them all. Just kill them all. Don't even just no, they're all bad. They're all bad. This show, this is what the person, so breaking it down to its very nitty-gritty for a storyline wise, you have a protagonist and an antagonist, right? You have the hero and you have the villain. If we're going really down to the bare nitty bones of things and like that, is usually what ends up happening. And there's conflict and everything. We get that. That's what stories have been about. That's what stories have been involved with. The one doing this is our protagonist. you're putting this in a light that it shouldn't be. Is my feelings about this. That's not okay. That is not okay. That should not be allowed. I don't know who made the idea or who thought that this was a good, God, the author of this, wherever it came from, or the the studio thought this was a good one to make into a anime. But I mean, this is what people tend to think about, like who don't know anime and only hear about it. This is what they think about. This is why it reminds me of how people tend to view anime instead of the wonderful storytelling or beautiful artwork or wonderful characterization. This is what they tend to think about. And here we go. Here's another example of it. And it infuriates me. I don't If you want to do adult content, I totally get that. But you need to have adult content in the right viewpoint. It needs to be for a purpose. It needs to be for a reason. You want to add a little bit of realism into your world by doing stuff like, someone's having sex or whatever. Hey, I get that. I mean, that is we tend to think about a lot of these things as black and white and don't think that these things tend to exist when we're watching these things. We're like, oh, it's an anime, it's a cartoon. That's not, those things don't exist. It's like, no, they exist. The anime itself is trying to portray real life in its own respect. Now, real life in the fantasy realm, I mean, it could be anything. We're talking about other worlds here, other worlds, other laws, other rules, whatever. But my mm, to have something like this readily accessible to anybody, especially someone young and impressionable about this, and then to have your protagonist, the one who is you're supposed to be rooting for. I mean, again, something like John Wick, where he's a killer. Yeah, we know he's a killer, but he gave up that life, and he wasn't going to do anything until some freaking hoodlums come and kill his dog and steal his car. Then that kind of, pissed him off or whatever. And I get maybe this guy had his reasonings. And the thing is that I almost feel like the anime knows that it needs to give you the reasonings as to why this is happening, because after the second episode where that things happened with the princess, then they do another episode going back in time once again to show you what happened to our protagonist when he met up with the other heroes, and they abused him. And I'm like, all right, totally get that. I understand. He suffered. I totally get that. But this is now taking it to the point of where, like, so because he suffered that way, it's okay to do things like this to other people? Is that what we're portraying here? It just, I don't know. And maybe I'm looking at this too seriously. I mean, I've been told about that. It's an anime. It's not real. Yada yada yada. But when it comes to something like this, and something I know that there are others out there who watch this sort of thing, who pick up on this sort of thing, who maybe don't have the people around them to tell them or give them reasonings as to why this is not acceptable or why this shouldn't happen. It infuriates me to see something like this just being thrown out there, you know. And I watch reactions to animes too, and the fact that I even see reactors reacting to this anime and putting it out there, I'm like, I haven't even watched their shit because I'm like, you know what? No, you meet. There was only one person that I watched, and he wasn't reacting to it. He was just talking about it, and his reaction to it was the same reaction as mine is just totally aghast and totally like, what the hell? Why is this considered an anime? Because it's not. It is so far not. So
I guess I didn't have enough. I'm glad I didn't have enough time to get to this one.
That's right. You have High Dive, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm I'm warning everyone against it. I'm telling everyone not to watch this. It's don't give it the time of day. And I will stake my claim and put my flag down and stand firm and say that this is appalling and should not exist, I think.
All right.
So, and the fact that that freaking description, again, here we go. Here's a description that does absolutely nothing. Would all that I described, would that description give you any clue that that's what this was about?
No.
No, not even close. You know, and I'm looking at like AnyList right now. I mean, they mention nudity, but that's it. They don't mention any other freaking thing about this thing. All right, there we go. No, I had to reveal. I had to reveal spoilers. Oh yeah, there we go. Rape, sadism, goddamn, anal sex, fellatio. Are you serious? My God. Oh my God. Yeah, it's just. you know, yeah. I. This was based on a light novel. What the hell? I think someone needs to go to that author and ask them if they're they're mentally okay. Cause, oh, holy shit.
Seems like this is the number 2 show where we are like, absolutely do not watch.
Yeah. What was our number 1 for that one?
That one where the girl was getting beat up by everybody.
Oh yeah. I remember that one. I mean, I'd say why'd you remind me of that, but I asked for it, so I won't. You have to remind me of that one, but no, I asked for it because I put that out of my mind. Yeah, no. Y'all, just anyone out there, I'm gonna recommend to the nth degree, do not watch this. Don't give it the time of day. Don't don't watch any of the people who are making a reaction to this on YouTube, because if you want to make sure that they understand the severity of why this is unacceptable, don't even let them see that you're giving this the time of day, because it honestly needs to be put down like the horrible thing that it is, because it is so bad, so bad. So
All right. The next show we're going to be talking about.
something better. Oh yes, something way better. something humongous. Oh God, this is night and day in comparison. Jesus.
The complete opposite spectrum.
God. Okay, I will say. Okay, have you watched this?
Oh my God. Absolutely.
Okay. Now I will say, there are some etchy moments in this, and you hear, they're the parents going at it at one point, or multiple points. Don't get me wrong.
It's like being in college with a roommate who's like real suave with the girls, and you're like,
Yeah,
dang it, he brought another one home.
yeah. But I mean, there again, that is not. It's etchy. It's not. It's etchy, but it's not over the top.
Yeah, it's like
It's not over the top.
if tastefully done, where it's like you actually feel like a roommate in college.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. This show may be my number one for this season, honestly. If I would say. This is everything I want in a fantasy anime. It has all of it. And I love the crap out of it. Okay, so I mean, you go ahead. I'm still collecting my thoughts on this. Go ahead.
okay, so yeah, basically, I woke up thinking about this show. I've only seen 3 episodes, and for that to happen, you have to pull out some magic.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so basically, it is an isekai show.
Mm-hmm.
It is the same premise that we've seen in a lot of other shows, where someone in their 30s dies in an accident, gets brought to a new world, not in their current form, but as sometimes they're brought as a kid, sometimes they're brought as a baby. In this show, they were brought as a baby. Um, they still have their mental faculties; they just can't express it through their body, and it is probably one of the best fantasy anime. Well, one of
the best I've seen in a long time.
one of the best executed shows that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. This is by far, I mean, every aspect of this I feel like is done so well. It feels the characters are done super well. The fact that they have the little bits of drama in between, I think are done really well. You know, it nothing ever seems out of place.
Yeah.
Like everything that comes to be and everything that they bring in all seem like they come from like there's it's reasonable. I can get where it's coming from. Like, the kid, especially growing up, since he still has his own the mental faculties when he was, where he was in Japan or whatever, he was a pervert. He wasn't very, and he wasn't very closeted about that. He was pretty open about that. So the fact that now he's in a new world, that doesn't necessarily change. Now, later on, he's trying to get a little bit better about that. Don't get me wrong. But he still has his tendencies. And, they can kind of see them. It happens. Um, and also, the main character, Rudy, which is his name in the reincarnated world, he had a pretty horrific life in our world. I mean, his life was just bad. And yes, there are certain aspects of that I think come from him, but also I think there's a lot of that came from outside sources. The kids that were bullying him to an extreme extent.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was some of the things that they showed. Now, see, here's the thing. We've seen animes in the past who've done bullying before. I think there's one that was just recently not down. Oh yeah, Jujutsu Kaisen. They had bullying inside of that one as well. From that one kid. Now, I feel like they do it well enough to where, like, you're not beating a dead horse, as this saying would go, essentially. Like, you're showing just enough. You're showing just enough to where you understand the atrocities that he had to go through without having there being an issue. You know what I mean? Like, you see it, you're like, oh my god, he was stripped naked and they took pictures of him. But it was like, what, maybe 5 seconds on the screen or something like that? And then later on, he's looking outside and he sees, all of a sudden a group of those people appear at the gate, making fun of him, calling him names and stuff like that. But again, that happens for a few seconds. So like you cumulatively throughout the first 3 episodes, they probably show this a very, I don't know, 4 or 5 different times roughly, and for a matter of like maybe 10 seconds at most on any given point in time.
And
Um,
it was at any moment where something that he saw or was near
would
directly
trigger.
reminded
Yeah,
him
it
of
would trigger
what
whatever it was.
yeah.
And so, to me, that allowed us, for the viewer, to be able to see. You began to understand his mindset. You began to understand where he came from, why he was the way he was, and what drove him to it. You understood that there was. It's not like some of those where it's like, oh, he's a neat and he just stays inside, doesn't do anything, da 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 da. No, there was reasonings behind it. There was a whole basically horrible things that happened to him. So I completely understand where a lot of that came from.
One thing that I kind of like the way that they executed it is because we don't know all of the information.
No.
And we don't know how much of fault he is for the situation, but we do know that the retaliation is something
Extreme.
that you really can't overcome.
No.
Like it's you versus the entire class.
Yeah.
So
Well, and even if there was, even if he did something like, I don't know, saw somebody's walked in on the girls' locker room or something like that. I don't know, but like the way that the girls there themselves were reacting to him, I didn't see anger in there. I just saw mean,
yeah,
like maliciousness.
yeah,
There was no, oh, we're doing this because you did this to us. No, it was pure, we're doing this because we can, and there's nothing you can do about it.
yeah.
Sort of thing. So I mean, I get, yeah, there may be some other things that have caused that whole debacle to happen, but it definitely seemed like the reasonings behind, like, even whatever what may have happened, what occurred to him afterwards, you know, was way beyond where it should have gone.
Yes. And
And
it also
so,
seemed like there was nobody he could turn to,
correct,
especially in
yeah,
his family.
yep,
So basically, he just vented against them,
mm-hmm.
and that led to him getting kicked out.
Yeah, yep.
So
No, I completely agree with that. Um, character
more
wise,
like
like,
retaliated against them.
yeah, character wise, beyond him, I mean, I love all the characters.
Oh my god, I wanted to go through each character because the show's
God,
so good. I
I love
feel
the
like I've
characters.
watched the whole show. Like if it was like a 90-minute movie, and I'm just like, oh, this was so great. They need a sequel. Like,
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Like every time a new episode comes out, I'm like, I can't wait to watch. I can't wait to watch. This is so amazing. I gotta watch. I gotta watch. What freaking happens? What is he gonna do? You know? Because the very first time. So not necessarily. I don't want to go through everything because anyone out here is watching this or watching us talk about this. Please, if you have not watched this, watch this. This is so awesome. Everything about it, absolutely amazing. Love every second of it. Um, but like even for the characters, like his mom, I love his mom. His mom's great, because he did that whole thing where he first started learning how to use magic, and then he did the spell a little bit too much that he shouldn't have done, without knowledge of it, and the fact that the dad walks in and a huge freaking hole in the wall of their house, and he's like, "Is that a monster? Was there a monster here?" And all of a sudden, the mom looks down, sees the book, and open, and is like, "Rudy, did you read this?" And then the look on her face, and I'm like, the way Rudy reacted, I'm like, I can't necessarily fault him for that, of being like, "Am I in trouble? No, don't tell me I'm in trouble." But I'm like, "Oh no, 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 you're not in trouble, dude." She's like, "Oh, she's gonna be so proud." And the minute he said, "Yeah, I did," she's like, "Yeah!" I'm like, "Oh man."
And it was kind of like there was this ongoing like argument between the mother and the father, where there's like, I want him to be a warrior. You promised if it was a boy, he was gonna be a warrior. But he's like, but look, he's not. He's always inside. Like he can do magic, and she had like no reason, like no leverage to like win the conversation. And then he's like, yeah. She's like, yes, I got some points. Yes, magician, we got a magician.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and then I like the fact that the maid has to be the median ground between the two of them, going, why can't he learn sword fighting during the day and magic at night? Good point.
Yes.
You know, and I like how there are quote unquote rules for this world as far as magic goes, but because he himself had the mental capacity to be able to start, and I think this is really what happened is because he started as young as he did. Mm-hmm. Is the reasoning why he's able to overcome and do the things that he can do. Because this is why, and again, this is why it blows me away, because you really think about it, even in our world, in our perspective, when you're young, you don't understand the limitations of your own, like even your own being. Like you see Superman go and lift a car, you're like, oh, I could do that. You know what I mean? Because you don't understand, you've never done it before, so you don't understand why you can't. And then you go and try and do it, and you're like, oh, wait, I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, or someone tells you, well, because your muscles aren't, strong enough in certain points, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, this is why you can't do that. I think because he is young enough as he is, but also has the mental capacity of somebody who is older, but also doesn't know about magic, is the reason why he can far exceed where he's at this time.
Yeah.
Like what normal mages would come across.
Yeah, he has the like practice discipline of like a 34-year-old man, but with the freedom of a kid.
Yeah, with like the wonder of being like, oh, I could do this. Oh wait, can I do this? Oh wait, oh let me try this. I can do this now too. It's like. And I really feel like, to me, that is probably the best way of going about magic that I have seen.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, that to me is just amazing in that regards. And then you put together the characters that are around him. Hell, even Roxy. Roxy was an amazing character.
Oh yeah.
I freaking love, God, every single one of these characters so far that I've met, and I'm like, and I know we have more characters because I'm looking at the sheet right here going, I haven't seen that person yet, I haven't seen that person yet, I haven't seen that person yet. I'm like, God, I want to meet all these characters because they're all going to be freaking amazing. I just know it.
I was so annoyed by Roxy at the beginning.
Oh yeah,
because she was like a bit full of herself. Where she's like, oh, y'all are stupid. Okay.
I mean, come on. You guarantee it. The reason why she says that is probably because she's been around that probably way too many times to count.
Yeah.
but to me, I didn't get necessarily annoyed at her. To me, when that happened, I'm like, oh, just watch it. Just watch. It's gonna happen. Where's the stunned reaction gonna happen? I know it's coming. Here it comes. And the fact that he starts doing incantation, and then the wind picks up, reveals her underwear. And all of a sudden, he stops mid-incantation and still fires off the with the same amount of power and force that she did. And I'm like, and that's when she's like, you didn't finish the incantation. Yeah, sometimes I don't do it at all. What? You're just like.
And then in the background, she's like, my tree! He's like,
See, that just like you said, the execution is done so well because she does the spell first to show him. She splits the tree basically, and all of a sudden he's like, well, that's my mom's favorite tree. She grew that from, and she's like, oh my god, and she goes and does a healing spell on it, and we're like, okay, she didn't notice. We're clear. Everything's fine. I mean, it's now budding and everything, so it's even healthier than it was before. But it's fine. It's fine. We'll just say that it's the miracle of life, whatever. And the fact that he does it, but then because mom, I would say, doesn't fully think that her son is capable of doing that, would immediately jump to the conclusion that she would be the one to have done it.
Yep.
Which is technically true because she did do it the first time. But she never. I'm like, oh god, that is so perfect. That's just like those lines, like with one of my favorite lines from Wreck-It Ralph,
Mm-hmm.
when King Candy or Wreck-It Ralph's confronting him and King Candy, and King Candy pulls out glasses. You go, you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses, would you? So he takes the glasses off of him and hits him with the glasses. And he's like, you hit a guy with glasses. Good play. And I'm like, see, that to me is like, that was the perfect setup. You're like, the execution was just so well thought out in there. And I'm like, God, that was just the perfect one there too. You know?
Yep.
And then the whole thing with the third episode with Sylphiette.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, at the very beginning, I'm like, dude, come on. You don't think that you're thinking she's a pretty boy? Really? That's what you're thinking?
I was on the fence. So I was like, huh.
Oh no, I knew. The minute I'm like, come on, that's no.
I was like, I'm gonna keep my eye on you. I don't know yet. I don't
But
want to jump to
he just
conclusions.
leapt to that conclusion, and then of course we're like, oh god. And then the minute the two of them got wet, and I see him disrobed and getting the bath ready, and I'm like, oh god, here it comes.
Yeah, as soon as I was like, oh no.
Yeah, we're like, oh no. So.
And like just the way that whole scene unraveled, like it felt very like real. Like it's not like the stereotypical like anime scene like that where it's like, ah, no, slap. It was like it just felt like I was like, oh my god, just leave her alone. I'm like, I feel like I was turned into a parent. Like, hey,
yeah. But like even with and then the thing with in the very beginning of that episode when the father found out, or when the mother of one of the kids that he stopped bullying her came to his dad and said, oh, he beat up my kid or whatever.
Yeah.
And his like, oh my god, I'm like, you want to add realism into your whatever it is that you're doing, anime, light novel, whatever, I don't care, game, whatever. Situations like this and the reactions that they had, I'm like, that's realism. That's realism. I'll tell you that right now. You know, I can't tell you how many times, or how many times, but I can't tell you when, talking with my own dad about it, him saying that there are certain decisions that even he made himself where he would stay up at night questioning, if he made the right decision or not, or worrying about what he did or whatnot, and seeing his dad's reaction to what had happened, and then understanding what his son had done, and I'm like, okay, this is real. This is somebody who understands he made a mistake, and is now feeling like he's not as good the idle parent that he originally thought himself was. Realism has set in. It's taken a step back. He understands he doesn't, because you get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm older than you. I know everything. I know things better than you. Don't try to hide things from me. I'm smarter than you are. But when you're up against things like you don't have all the information for, you don't always know everything. And he just thought that whatever Rudy was going to say was going to be an excuse as to why he did what he did, not without thinking, oh, there was actually this way that it was explained to me wasn't correct.
Yeah.
And the fact that so he had that moment in the beginning where he did that and he slapped him because of that. But then when Rudy finds out that Sylphiette is a girl and everything, you see that moment where they're both in the tub and he's talking with him, and I'm like, now see, this is, I don't think, had that first part not happened, this part might not be happening.
Yeah.
Because now he's like, now when Rudy's like, I didn't think that she was a she, I thought she was a boy. He might not have believed that. But now that he knows his son's trying to be truthful with him, and let him know what it really happened, now he's like, I'm going to listen to what you say, and I'm going to be like, okay, it was a mistake. let's move on, and let's fix this.
Yeah.
You know. So to me, like you said, execution wise, 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10. Great,
Yeah.
great execution, great
Yeah,
characters.
like with the dad, like even like where the dad's character is going to go, I'm like, he seem the dad seems like he's an adventurer that's settling down, but still wants to be fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as he's enjoying like family life and raising a family and
Mm-hmm.
raising a kid and raising a son to be his power, like just last my boy, it's I I see both sides of it. He's like enjoying the like family life, but then also like he's still practicing and like still
Well, and
fighting and
I
stuff
think
like
they kind of glossed over it a little bit, but I think what they had mentioned before, which when Roxy was coming to be the teacher, is that he is the knight guarding that village.
that. Okay.
So he's there as their protector. So should any bad things come, like he said, I mean, this goes back to where when Rudy made that giant hole in the side of their house or whatever, and he said, was it a monster? My thought is it doesn't happen very often,
Mm-hmm.
but it can happen to where monsters can show up, and somebody has to be there to protect the people, which is why he's stationed there. You could almost think of him, if you're wanting to think of it in modern terms, you could almost think of him as like the sheriff.
Okay.
You know,
That
he's
makes
there just to serve as the protector for that village. Just probably because the village is probably so far away from the main castle of the lord or whatever
mm-hmm.
that they have to have a standing. I mean, it's not like there's obviously we've seen years and years of Rudy's life so far, so obviously nothing's really happened in all that time.
Yeah.
So it's not like it happens all the time, but
So so for both of them it's kind of like a semi-retirement where it's
I, th-
like
I
they're
think
still
so.
in active duty, but they get to settle down and also have a family too.
Yeah, I think that's what the case is.
Okay, that's really
She's
cool.
a healer. He's a knight, and they're stationed there because they're like, you know what, we're done with our adventuring, but we still want to settle down, have a family, do all that stuff that all normal people do and whatever. But we'll still be here, and we still earn a living by the fact that we're essentially the guardians, the law of this village, essentially. You know, so
Um, trying to think. Yeah, we've gone through the main characters. So I had mentioned before that there was one part of a show that made me laugh and it gave me a headache.
hmm
Um, and you like mentioned part of it when you were talking about it. Um, the final test
oh.
that
See, I thought when you started cracking up when I had said being a dead horse, that's probably where that came from. I thought that might have been where that came from.
so the final test was like a saint level water spell,
Mm-hmm.
and when Roxy was like demonstrating it, it basically created this like thunderstorm, and they were out on this flat land, and like there's like one tree, so basically a lightning rod, and lightning struck, and it either hit the horse or the tree or both, and instantly killed the horse. And when that happened, I was like, oh no! I'm like, one, she done killed her boss's horse. Two, how they gonna get home? Or like three, oh no, the poor freaking horse. Four, that happened to me in Zelda. and, then and then five, oh wait, she could use healing magic. And as all those thoughts went through me, me and the boy said healing magic at the same time. And she was like, oh yeah, she's like, oh yeah, let's do that. So she used healing magic on the horse, and then the horse tried to stand up.
Oh, you can see it. The legs were really wobbly right then and there.
I was like, just seeing the horse in that shape, I was laughing for like 10 minutes. I was like, I'm okay. I'm okay. happy because she mentioned that the horse was finally happy that like the sun was riding him, and like he was all like, "Ah, this is cool."
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
Like I said, everything about this show. I mean, by far, this probably has to be because I rate it based upon my excitement for when a new episode comes out. Like how excited and how dedicated am I that when a new episode comes out, I'm like, I gotta watch it. I gotta watch it. I gotta watch it. This is the one this season where when it comes out, I'm like, I gotta watch it. I gotta watch it. I gotta watch it. Because it's just like I gotta know what happens. I gotta know, and they're not even leaving it on cliffhangers. That's even the more thing like that. They're not even really leaving it on cliffhangers. They have the ending to each one, but I just want to know what happens after that.
yeah,
And I'm like, kudos to Studio Bind, which this is their first anime. Their first. Studio Bind, keep this up. Like, keep this up. If you continue with it, because I mean, even from your perspective, I'm sure you even said this is gorgeous looking. One,
oh, yeah.
I mean, every like scene, I'm like in the way they do the magic and the way that you see in like the fields that they're in sometimes, and I'm just like even when you said that saint level spell when he was doing that, I'm like the way the magic came together, the looks, the style of it, the way the wind was blowing all that field and grass around and all that, and I'm just like that looked gorgeous,
Yes.
and I'm just like y'all keep this up because if you continue this route I'm gonna watch every single anime that you guys come out with. Because to me, you've already piqued my interest. So
Best anime of the season. Yeah. So yeah, I was completely and totally impressed by this. Like, yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for the rest. So the next show we're going to talk about is the Hidden.
are you still there? Uh-oh.